Good evening, I'm Jahnhub, and today we're crashing castles. Castle Crashers is a 2008 banger, and with the newly released Painter Boss Paradise DLC, fit with a new character, a new weapon, Steam Workshop support, and a purdy new art style, the game's never been better. And that's why today, I'll be 100% completing Castle Crashers. I'll be unlocking every character, every weapon, every animal orb, and every Steam achievement. Will I endure a castle-based crash out, or will I prevail despite the insane difficulty that is completing this game? I guess you'll just have to find out as I tackle yet another nostalgic game right now. There have been many great questions asked throughout history. Why is the sky blue? Is there an afterlife? And are we, the knights, the Castle Crashers? Or are the villains the Castle Crashers? I don't know, man. Ask Dan Fulp about it. Castle Crashers has a story so simple that I'll summarize it in a single sentence. When an evil wizard steals the king's big crystal thingy and the princesses, 4 knights are sent to retrieve the crystal thingy and the princesses. That's about it. There are 36 levels in total, not including stores, hubs, or side objectives, and you must fight through waves of enemies and bosses to reclaim what was once the kingdoms. With 36 levels in total, you may assume that there are some amazing entries as well as some weak ones in there, but I'm happy to report, not really. Just about every level ranges from pretty good to iconic in some way. There's definitely some nitpicks and small gripes I have with a couple of them, but since Castle Crashers is a side-scrolling beat-em-up, everything's just kinda consistently good. Really, the worst thing you can say about the game in general is that the gameplay is a bit repetitive, but this game's collection of levels and enemy types manages to keep things fresh in spite of that. In fact, and I'm about to declare this as an objective fact, Castle Crashers is the best side-scrolling beat-em-up of all time. Sorry, rival turf for the Super Nintendo, but Castle Crashers has everything. Tons of characters to play as, a charming art style, a hard but fair difficulty curve. It's a fantastic game to play solo or with up to 4 friends, and it doesn't overstay its welcome at all. In fact, it only took me about 2.5 hours to beat the story, with one character that is. And now for the part of the video that always takes up half the runtime. I'm going to go into detail on every level in the game, as it is the bulk of what you'll be doing when completing Castle Crashers. I was unsure at first as to how many levels there are, since a lot of them connect pretty seamlessly, but doing a quick head count on the map and consulting the wiki, I counted 36. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, and also subscribe, like the video, it helps out the channel. Did you know that only 0.1% of people are subscribed? But without further ado, here we go. Home Castle is the first level, and probably where we get the most exposition in the game. This is where we see the crystal and princesses are stolen, and if we pay attention, we can see just about every boss that we'll fight throughout the story. We start in this opening area where there's plenty of NPCs to teach us how to fight, use items, all that good stuff, but we can just run past it because we are elite gamers, of course. We fight through a few waves of very easy barbarian enemies, and that's about it. So although it's not a super fun level by any means, it's a perfect introduction to basically everything you'll need to know when playing. Castle Keep is a level that you might be surprised has its own spot on the map when you first play it, but there's a very good reason. The entire level is a single wave of enemies, and after you beat them, the castle's store opens. The store has potions and a crappy sword you can buy, and that's about it. This is the first of many shops that you'll find throughout the game, and I think it's kinda cool from a progression standpoint that this one requires you to fight some enemies before even using it, then the later ones have no such requirement. I don't know, I thought it was cool. I don't know, open your mind a little bit. I will admit it's barely a level though. I consider everything thus far a bit of a tutorial or opening to the game, but Barbarian War is where the game really starts. It's truly just non-stop enemies, you fight a few, you advance, fight more, advance. I mean, it's a beat 'em up, that's kinda how it works. You also run into a mini-boss, this wooden Trojan horse kinda tank thing. It's very large and therefore easy to hit, and it goes down pretty quickly as well. The level ends right before presumably a boss battle. I won't spoil anything though. Barbarian Boss is the first boss level, and it's where you fight the first boss, named the Barbarian Boss. He's huge, he's got a big ol' spike shield on his back, he does a backwards flame burp. What can't this man do? Beating him lets you rescue the first of 4 princesses, which if you're in a multiplayer game, you have to battle each other to be the knight to give her a smooch, and that's pretty chill. Next is Forest Entrance, a fairly forgettable level, but it has this sort of green horse creature that you can ride. I'll call it a horse. This is one of only a few mounts that show up in the entire game, mostly at the beginning of the game, to be honest. The music that plays throughout this level is pretty epic though, so I'll give it that. I am so conflicted about the Thieves' Forest level. It's such an iconic and essential level in the game. It's a great change of scenery. It's home to the boomerang weapon. It's got the animals that do poopies for comedic effect. And it's a great source of XP whether you're grinding the boss at the end or doing this XP glitch with the hawk pet. More on that later. It's a very solid level, but having to wait there and watch the animals make poopies to progress makes for a not so replayable experience. A poopy one, if you will. The Abandoned Mill is a short but sweet level where you ride deer through a scrolling section to avoid the troll boss. At least I think it's a troll. There's an achievement if you can do this section without taking any damage, and since I'm an elite gamer, of course I did. The next two levels transition so seamlessly that I forgot they're even two different levels. You've got the Rapids ride where you're swimming down some rapids and you can mount debris or creatures in the water. There's all sorts of annoying enemies, but it's short and sweet once you get the hang of it. The second level in this pair is the Catfish boss, who's annoying until you know exactly what to do. You do no damage to it unless you stun it. The king and his men are behind you loading a cannon that won't shoot if the cat's hairball hits it. It took me about 5 years to realize that I could destroy the hairball for the cannon to go off, but now I know. We're out of the water and onto the land with tall grass field. You start the level passing by the king and his knights, prepping some sort of attack. You fight bears, then you fight some bears, then a bear boss. Watch out, he's pretty damn strong for no reason. And just when you thought it was over, the bears are buff now. But then you enter a cave and the level's over. Excuse me if I mispronounce this as I don't speak Italian, but Pipistrello's Cave is a short and sweet level where you fight a few slimes before running into the Stunad. It's a pretty easy level in boss fight, but the farting and the pooping, oh my own. After the pissing and shitting bat level, we're greeted by a nice flowery field. The king and his knights have mounted an attack, and you charge in with them all to storm the castle. You start by fighting off bees, then some beekeepers, before running into the knights of the castle, these enemies with big cones for helmets. For whatever reason, these are the only enemies in the game that are really hard to juggle in the air, but not too difficult. Towards the end of the level, there's also a catapult that you can launch from. There's an achievement for launching at max power, which takes you about 10 feet ahead of what the lowest power does. It's pretty underwhelming. Within the castle lies the knight's true goal, crashing a wedding between one of the enemy knights and a princess. You literally crash through the roof and fight your way through waves of cone-headed knights. You finally reach the groom, who's kind of a tough boss fight. He has a lot of different moves to keep track of, and a lot of them make him invulnerable. The most notable of which is one where he runs over to an organ that allows him to shoot explosives on the battlefields. We beat him, but then the Cyclops appears. Instead of fighting, he decides to cry over the loss of his friend and run away. That's probably what I would have done.
Yeah, that's what I would have did.
Are we really the good guys? No time to think about that. We blast out of the castle and crash a parade, presumably for the bride and groom-to-be. You ride a fast-moving carriage and are bombarded by enemies, bombs, and later the huge troll thing that we ran away from like 7 levels ago. I don't know the intended way to beat this boss, but jumping over to him and hovering in the air from attacking always seems to work. You defeat the boss, get knocked off of the carriage, and enter a cave to finish the level. A lot of caves in this game. The next few levels are a trio. First is Cyclops Cave. You can see the carriage parked here. There's a good amount of knights with the cone helmets, and that's about all there is for it. Second is Cyclops Gate, which is even less memorable. You navigate through a volcano-y level with cracks in the ground that shoot up walls of lava. You basically just need to time it out so you don't collide with the lava. This is one of the shortest levels in the game. The trio ends with the Cyclops Fortress, which is the only level in a normal playthrough that consistently gives me trouble. You can only carry 5 potions at a time, and once you've started the flowery field level, you actually just keep doing all the levels back to back until you reach this one, and aren't forced back to the map unless you choose to go there. It's a pretty hard one. As expected, there's more cone helmet knights, and you fight the Cyclops at the end. He has a fairly predictable attack pattern. He charges at you to stab the floor in front of you a few times, then he switches over to throwing daggers, which you are able to block. After a few attacks between these phases, he should be dead. I always spec into strength first when I play, so the Cyclops does quite a bit of damage since I haven't leveled defense at all. After you beat him, he falls into the lava, never to be seen again. He's okay though, he gave the thumbs up. If you're in multiplayer, this is where you fight for the second princess, by the way. Very early on in the game, there's an area called the dock. A captain asks for a compass, a wheel, and a telescope in order to board the ship and reach the other half of the game's map. The compass can be collected very early on at the blacksmith, but the other two are in the following 2 levels. The wheel can be found in Lava World, which is a level full of these demons and an introduction to my favorite item in the game, the sandwich. For whatever reason, eating a sandwich makes your night insanely jacked for 10 seconds, allowing you to damage enemies, tear steel doors off their hinges, and even go toe-to-toe with other beefy enemies. It's not that overpowered as you have a limited time and your hitbox is massive in this form, but it's fun and ridiculous and I love it, okay? After a few waves of demons, you fight a volcano that can only be damaged by eating the sandwich, and at the end you fight a huge sock puppet dragon thing. A cool and painless level, unlike the one after this. Industrial Castle is one of those skill check levels that's way harder than most of the other things in the game, but if you're able to get through it, you don't have much more to worry about difficulty-wise. The level starts with a door that can only be opened by using the sandwich, and then the gauntlet begins. You fight a few waves of industrialists and fencers, who, from looking at a tier list of characters in the game, are some of the best playable characters due to their buzzsaw magic. They're weirdly hard to fight, honestly. Afterwards, you have to pass by the industrial machines from hell. There are these crusher things that alternate, and for whatever reason, I can never run in between them without getting hit at least once. Next are these electric gates that alternate, and these aren't too bad. The only other part of note leading up to the boss is this wave of these buff armored guys. This is maybe the single hardest wave of enemies that you have to fight in a normal level, and I had to implement some creative kiting just to not get destroyed right away. At the end you get to the boss, and it's a big machine fit with these cannons, these explodey things, and a big hand that slowly creeps up to you and vaguely reminds me of a Cuphead boss. Destroying the machine will reward you with a telescope, and then we're ready to set sail. Back to the dock, and I'll just go ahead and show what the whole level consists of here. So that's about it. We're now on the pirate ship, which is a brand new level by the way, and this one's pretty short too. You fight a few waves of ninjas, who are pretty annoying in that if you try to combo or juggle them, they'll turn into logs and attack you from another angle, but nothing that an elite pro gamer like myself can't handle, of course. We then start one of the many desert themed levels, with a level simply called Desert. This level's got scorpions, these big bugs, these big sandworm bugs, a lot of bugs in this one. This is where we find the shovel, a must-have for many collectibles throughout the game. We end the level by fighting a UFO before we get abducted and taken to the next level. Alien Ship. Here, you fight a gadrillion aliens, as a reference to the Behemoth's first game, Alien Hominid. Beating this level unlocks the alien character, and as a completionist, nothing gets my rocks off quite like unlocking something. Can I get a hell yeah brother in the comments, please? Let me know if you're hard in the comments right now. Thank you. No, don't use that one. We narrowly escape to an exploding ship, and we're back in the desert for Desert Chase. There's of course a few waves of enemies, but the main objective is to chase this guy to the sandcastle. If you catch him in time, you get an animal companion as well. You get to ride the camel, so although I'm not rating the other levels, this one does get a 10 out of 10 because the camel is cute. Next level, please. We then enter the sandcastle interior, which is a brief level where you do a pretty hard fight against some tanky and buff enemies, before taking a staircase to the roof. The sandcastle roof is the last of our desert-themed levels. You fight a cavalcade, you like my word choice there? You fight a cavalcade of archers and a bunch of guards, and instead of a boss fight, we play a big game of volleyball. It's important to note that I had to do this level a few times while 100%ing the game, and multiple times the volleyball game broke, causing me to have to find some creative fix or outright leave the level. Not a fun time, but the volleyball minigame is a fun idea, so I'll give it a pass. Winning rewards you with a map that reveals the rest of the game's map. I'm the map. Alright, home stretch, 10 more levels to go. The following level greets you with an inaccessible gate and redirects you to the marsh. For those waiting for a Jahnhub Halloween video, this level has some spooky skeletons and the dead is now undead. Ooh! Jokes aside, this is a very dense level with a lot of enemies to fight, and the next one is not too fun either. In a beat 'em up like this, I'd imagine it's pretty difficult to create a multitude of bosses with unique designs and movesets, but when I say the corn boss is maybe one of the worst bosses in gaming history, I don't think I'm exaggerating by that much. This is my least favorite level in the whole game, and to this level's credit, the boss design is very clever. You're on a farm and there's a giant corn on the cob that burrows underground, spins at rapid speeds, and smacks you with its husk, right? The part of the corn you shuck is called the husk. That doesn't sound right. As you damage the corn, more of the kernels fall off, and you're actually able to eat them to restore a small amount of HP. The part where this boss sucks is that even if you've memorized its patterns, you do picometers to the corn's health bar, on top of only getting a couple hits in at a time. You have these helpers throughout the fight too, but they suck! But with the corn boss defeated, we're onto a series of banger levels throughout the whole rest of the game. Alright, try saying this 3 times fast. Beating the corn gives you the horn. The horn is maybe the most useless item in the game. It lets you open this door that leads into the next level. There's like 2 collectibles you can find by blowing it in the right spot. It's pretty bad. The next level is the Flooded Temple, home of some of the most obnoxious enemies of all time. These green fish guys that jump behind you every 10 damage you do to them. They suck and I hate them. The Flooded Temple is a pretty brief level that directly leads into Medusa's lair. There's more of the aforementioned fish, some of the green guys from the marsh level, and finally Medusa. Pretty early on, there's a nice rhythm you can do where you get a couple hits in, then hold up your shield to block the snakes in her hair. Bada bing bada boom, Mr. Worldwide wanna step in the room. She's turned to stone and gone forever. Next level, please. Full Moon is a pretty tough level when you fight these heavy knights that are basically impossible to juggle. Once you've reached here, you're essentially in the home stretch of the game. This level culminates in the section where there are a million of these heavy knights fighting you at once, and just when you think you're thinning out the numbers, more of them spawn. It's probably the most enemies you'll see on screen in a normal level. Traveling further ahead reveals some snowy enemies, and you get a snowy level up ahead. As if I couldn't get more on the nose, this level is called Snow World. You fight groups of these enemies in elaborate icy structures. You visit a cool Christmassy village before entering into yet another cave. This game loves caves, man, I'm telling you. But I actually lied, as this is no ordinary cave, but the Ice Castle, home of yet another slightly irritating boss, the Frost King. The lead up to him is no problem at all. You just have to pass some trials where the challenge lies in getting used to the icy floors of the castle. Once you reach the Frost King, he has a similar problem to the Corn Boss in that he rapidly moves from one side of the map to the other and is untargetable while moving. Unlike the Corn Boss though, you can actually do a lot of damage every time he appears, if you know where he's going to show up. Defeating him rewards you with the third princess, and now we're on to the final levels. Starting off with Wizard Castle Takeoff. This level is basically a cutscene. You shoot up into the air to reach a floating castle, Beyblading your way to the top. There are some rocks to avoid that hardly do any damage even if you hit them, and once you get to the top you can just enter the castle. It's like a 30-second level. Wizard Castle Interior, however, is not a 30-second level. It's probably the hardest level in the game, and by far the longest. More difficult than the final boss too, in my opinion. You start by fighting these guards that are resistant to magic and difficult to juggle, before getting to the main part of the level. This room with 4 doors and 4 bosses. You have to beat these one at a time to unlock the next. Through door number 1 is the Painter boss, who's a very creative boss that we don't see much of in gameplay or cutscenes. He comes down, gives birth to a little Paint Jr., which is exclusive to the new DLC, I wish I was making this up, and then you fight him. He's got 2 phases. In the first, he comes down, you attack him while he paints, and his creations come to life. You have to defeat the creations to get the painter to come back, and taking any damage from these creations at all will destroy the creation at the cost of damaging you heavily. Phase 2 has the painter boss running around, spawning in creations rapidly. You basically have to fight him in a minefield of his own paintings come to life. Not a hard boss by any means, and spamming this boss fight is a great way to farm money in the game. Defeating the painter boss leads you to a room with a crystal to destroy, and destroying it dissolves the barrier to door number 2. Remember that Cyclops I said would never come back? Well, he's pretty easy though. You wait until there's an opening in his attacks, beat the shit out of him, then he jumps on the coffin he's holding and the groom from the Wedding Crasher level comes out and you have to avoid him while he's undead and invincible. We swiftly defeat the Cyclops and we're off to door number 3. Door number 3 is pretty damn hard. You enter the room and notice that the whole floor is covered in dead bodies. You see the Necromancer fly in and rapidly raise the dead. You fight a wave of super strong enemy types from throughout the game, and when they're defeated, he raises an even stronger wave of enemies. After these 2 though, he flies down and if you're lucky, you can actually skip this fight by juggling him in the air. If you lose your juggle though, you actually have to fight him legit, which isn't too difficult as long as you're careful. But with the Necromancer defeated, it's on to the final level through door number 4. The last level in the game is aptly titled Final Battle, and it's against the evil wizard from the beginning of the game. This fight has 6 phases, which has to be some sort of record, but they're all really easy. I don't think that this final boss is underwhelming by any means, but even under the hardest conditions, this is not a tough boss, or final boss especially by any means. Defeating the evil wizard rewards you with his sword, and a crystal ride home with the final princess. Let's go everyone, it's time to get my freaking smooch, and she's a clown. And she's doing a funny dance, and this always happens to me. I mean, I'd still fuck. And that's Castle Crashers in a nutshell. If you're just trying to beat the game and not complete it, that's everything. But of course we are 100%ing the game. In addition to all the levels in the main story, there are additional areas to go to as well. I didn't talk much about the stores that you unlock through clearing levels, since they're just spots on the map where you can buy potions and everything. There are 5 arenas you unlock throughout the story, usually around the same time you unlock a new shop. You fight waves of enemies in a Colosseum-like arena, and if you tackle them after you've beaten the game, they're all a total cakewalk. Each one rewards you with an unlockable character as well. There's also the blacksmith just left of the starting area of the game. Every weapon you find on the floor, get from an enemy or boss, or purchase goes directly here. There's also a number of animal companions that can be found. There's a little Noah's Ark here that has all of them. So here's the tedious part with 100%ing Castle Crashers. It's unlocking all the characters. Characters are unlocked in one of a few ways. You can get a character per arena you clear for the first time. Some characters are only obtainable via DLC. That's probably the easiest method to unlock characters, assuming you have your mom's credit card. There's also characters that can be unlocked through Insane Mode. Insane Mode is very difficult, but we'll talk about that later. Beating the game is also a requirement for unlocking characters, which leads me to the tedious part. In order to unlock every character in Castle Crashers, you don't just need to beat the game once, you need to beat the game from beginning to end with 13 different characters. And so long as you're not the sender of this scam sponsorship email that I got the other day, you will shortly discover that I am not a team, but rather one single man. Or so you think. You could choose not to believe me, but Dorothy was right. I am a team. Using a super secret program online called X360CE, I was able to clone my controller 3 times. Through this method, I could be all 4 players at once and unlock everyone 4 times as fast. It was honestly kind of difficult at first. Enemies scale with the number of players in the game, so my options were either to play zone defense and have a character handle each corner of the map, or the more fun option, which was to stack everyone on top of each other and do 4 times damage. I went with the fun one. There was a bit of a learning curve. I think the enemy AI has some sort of countermeasure in place for when multiple people are attacking them at once, where they counterattack and you drop to 0 HP in 2 seconds. This can happen pretty easily if you're not paying attention, but by jumping and juggling enemies in the air, you can circumvent this pretty easily. So overall, my total number of playthroughs was 4, 1 with just the Green Knight, and then 3 more playthroughs with different combinations of characters in order to unlock everyone else. Once I found a good groove, this was pretty painless, and even despite not having beat the game 13 times, this was still very much time consuming. Like any game that takes time, patience, and skill to complete, Castle Crashers has a laundry list of gear to collect and hyper-specific achievements that you can almost never get by accident. The gear is very much self-explanatory. In every level and shop, there's weapons and animal orbs hidden about, some of which are very easy to miss. Not really much to say here, they're either in plain sight or blend into the level in some way. There's this one in the snow shop that's extra annoying, and I don't know how you could ever find this without a guide. You need to dig in this exact spot with the shovel, and even while staring at a video of where to dig, this one took me a few attempts. There's also a list of character-specific weapons, where the easiest way to unlock them is just to play as the character. I had to do this jank thing where I grabbed another weapon, then the character-specific weapon again to unlock it. Kinda odd, but I thought it was interesting. Eventually though, I was able to find every weapon and animal orb in the game. I had to reference the wiki and a video in order to tell I had every weapon though, because the weapons rack at the blacksmith spaces the weapons out really awkwardly, so it looks like I'm missing some, but guys, I promise I'm not. You have to believe me. Castle Crashers actually only has 12 achievements in total on Steam, and none of them are particularly easy. I mentioned some previously while talking about the levels in the game, but there's also some basic ones like beating the game, or finding all the animal orbs. Some of the ones I'd never find normally in a million years include getting all 4 kisses from princesses in a multiplayer game. I achieved this during one of my control all 4 people at once playthroughs, and just let one character get all the kissies. There's one for defeating a late game boss without any magic. There's also one for winning 40 arena matches online. I didn't have time to go online and get matched against randoms to get this one fair and square, but I did just have a friend allow me to beat his ass 40 times or so thanks man! But the most obscure achievement is called Conscientious. Is that pronounced? Did I pronounce that right? I'm losing it, bro. But the most obscure achievement is called Conscientious Subjector, where you have to go from the start of the game to beating the first boss without attacking anyone. I have no clue what the intended method for this is. Maybe playing online with a friend and having them do all the work would work, but I read online that you could play as specifically the Red Knight and just spam some of his magic and it doesn't count as attacking. So I leveled up the Red Knight, used only jump magic, and for some reason you can use regular magic on this boss, and bada bing I did that. Weird game. Not incredibly important to completing Castle Crashers, but there are a couple side modes that you can play. You can do the volleyball game from that one Desert Castle level, local or online PvP with friends, and most interesting is a side game called Back Off Barbarian. You start off as a piece on a board, and you have to play keep away from enemies. Over time, more enemies appear, and the game gets faster. The main challenge is that every space you want to move is mapped to a direction that typically doesn't match the direction you want to go, So you could want to move left, for example, and to move left you'd have to press up. The buttons also change every space you move, making it very tough to number 1, move quickly, and number 2, go exactly where you want to go. The last achievement I needed was to survive 2.5 minutes in this game mode, which is much easier said than done. This took at least 2 to 3 hours for me, and I got close a couple times. This is a really fun one, I just wish I got to play it under better circumstances. Oh, one last thing too. I beat the game 4 times over, got all the weapons, animal orbs, achievements, all that good stuff. Once you beat the game once, you unlock Insane Mode, a mode that is insanely difficult to play. I ended up choosing the Blue Knight for this run, as his ice is great for keeping enemies in place, and you can freeze enemies infinitely by spamming this combo with magic at the end. If I was going to stand a chance though, I'd need to grind for XP. Thankfully there's an age-old trick that I still remember years later somehow, that consists of you stomping on an enemy when they're right at the side of this ledge. This will cause them to climb up, and this hawk pet that only attacks enemies on the ground will attack this enemy infinitely. The pillar blocks him from getting closer, and Viola! You can AFK forever and slowly accumulate XP. There are most likely faster ways in the big 2-5 to get experience, but hey, I'm a completionist, not a freaking speedrunner. Once I was thoroughly leveled up, I began my run. It was honestly really smooth sailing for most of the run. I remember struggling immensely as the Green Knight doing this as a kid, but with the Blue Knight and my superior adult brain, I had no issue at all. Until I did. The Necromancer fight on Insane Mode is probably the hardest fight I've come across. It's a pretty simple fight in a normal playthrough, but on Insane the enemies zoom around the screen so fast you can barely touch them, and the beefy enemies throw you and do half your health if you let them get close. Couple this with the fact that enemies have a Pavilion HP, and you have a very, very hard fight. Insane even, I would say. But just like how I found a way to do way less runs, I found a super secret exploit to beat this section. It's called not doing it. So I thought there were unlockables for beating Insane Mode all the way through, but it turns out you can get every weapon and character exclusive to Insane Mode by beating about 75% of it, so outplayed I guess. I mean I wasted my time doing some extra levels, but haha, I win. Well, that's another 100% under my Jahnhub belt. Now it's time for the age-old question. Would I recommend that you, the viewer, 100% this game? Nope. Thank you all for watching. On the screen right now, I've got all my patrons and YouTube members. If you'd like to see your name here, consider joining one of those 2 things. I have a couple more videos planned for this year. Hopefully I can get those out in a timely manner before the next yearly theme begins. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye.